You gonna do this review with me? You didn't see it. What do you have to add to the equation? Can you get down so I can do this review, please? I said please. Hello loves, it's Nicole, and since they do not call me Thespian Niki for nothing, I thought that I would do a review of the touring production premiere night of The Wiz. So I went to see The Wiz opening night here in Atlanta, and I have a lot to say. As a true thespian, I wanted to give my opinion for those who are also really into the arts, into theater, because it's one thing to give feedback in terms of being connected to someone in the production versus having no stake in the game and really looking at it from a lens of a theatrical performer, director, producer, actor, scene designer, whatever. I just wanted to give a little bit of insight for those who have a certain level of expectation in terms of this production. So let's get right into it. First things first, I feel like they should identify it as reimagined. There are a lot of elements. Actually, let me back up. And I'm sure I'm going to get my black card revoked immediately. But I saw The Wiz maybe once. I'm not even 100% sure I saw the movie all the way through. I wasn't feeling it. I kind of grew up on The Wizard of Oz. And so getting the black version of The Wizard of Oz just didn't hit with me, you know, connection-wise. As a young black girl watching a whitewashed black movie that didn't resonate, just did absolutely nothing for me. So there's that. And then there is the fact that I did see the live version because Queen Latifah was in it, and anything Queen Latifah is a part of, I wanted to see, but I kind of half watched that as well. So I'm not 100% familiar with The Wiz in its totality. Like, I know it is a black version of The Wizard of Oz, and I have seen The Wizard of Oz million of times. With that being said, I feel like they should have considered this a reimagined, because even from what I know of The Wiz, this was not that. And that is okay. And so when you say reimagined, it's letting your audience know that it's not going to be what you expect or are familiar with when it comes to the script, characters, and dialogue. The biggest thing for me was the lack of emotional connection I had to the production. And that was mostly because it focused more so on trying to have comical moments that it kind of abandoned the plot. Meaning there is a storyline. The storyline is supposed to guide the audience through the beginning, middle, and end. And I found myself being lost. So it was almost like they had the anticipation of us being familiar with the production, with The Wiz. But you reimagined it. Like, you drifted away from what The Wiz is supposed to be. Hence, therefore, while your plot, your storyline has to be strong, because you now need to guide us through this new lens that you want us to see the production in. It was also very music heavy, which is interesting because the music is supposed to support the storyline. And the storyline was kind of almost non-existent. Now, again, because I am familiar with The Wizard of Oz, I kind of knew what I was supposed to be observing. However, the music was not hitting like it was supposed to, because there was not enough dialogue and storyline to propel you to listen to amazing voices. I mean, you had some amazing voices, but it wasn't backed up and supported by enough of the other things that when it got to certain songs, you were like sold 100% in it. It was just kind of like, you sound great, and that was that. One of the biggest things for me in a production is along with a storyline, a clear storyline, is the set. I feel like I am the type of person who can use my imagination, so I'm totally okay with there being minimal aesthetics to a stage, but I was extremely underwhelmed with the curtains opening and there's this little tiny house and a little windmill clothesline and a scrim in the back that had images. So it was slightly lackluster, and I think also because when you say Broadway, there's a level of expectation when you put that name to anything. I didn't feel like aesthetically that was even met with a Broadway production. Whether or not it's touring is null and void to the fact that you put Broadway in the name of this particular production. So I was slightly underwhelmed with that. So going from this opening scene where the curtains open and you have this little small house, there was Dorothy and her aunt, and this is where I felt like I should have been set up for the storyline to get me emotionally invested so that you keep my attention and you build me up for the end of the production, which I'll get to. It opens with Dorothy and she's hanging clothes, and the aunt comes in and asks her some type of question, and she kind of takes the clothes, tosses it into the basket. I don't want to talk about it. And then the aunt spends about 5 beats looking around like the black mom, like, who are you talking to? And I'm like, do we really have to go to the place of the angry black teenager and the aunt, guardian, whomever, being like, who are you talking? Like, why was it necessary? I feel like they were trying to create these moments, comical moments, but abandoning the storyline. Now, if they were going to go 110% into this young lady having an attitude, make me believe it and then carry it all the way through. So again, when we get to the end, there is something for me to grab onto with this closing scene. They have that little moment, and then I feel like they were trying to lean into maybe Dorothy was being bullied at school because there was this necklace that she had that the aunt asked her what was in her hand after they finished singing this song that I'm not even sure was, like, I think might have been original. So it's a locket of her mom, and then the aunt goes into this, girl, yeah, this is your mom, and we used to, you know, have a good time. And then it goes into this other song, but she mentions something about bullying, and then that gets tossed to the side. The next thing you know, it's the aunt is like, oh, there's a tornado, and some people come out as the wind spinning around, the house blows away, the clothesline spins away, and then she's in Oz. Okay, there was no build up to that. There was no, I don't know if anybody is familiar with The Wizard of Oz, but even with The Wizard of Oz, she was running away, and there was a setup to why she was running away and why she wanted to be disconnected, even though getting to this land of Oz is not what she wanted. You had a backstory as to why she was initially trying to leave in the first place, and there was villains set up in place. There were people introduced to you before she even went to Oz. We're only introduced in The Wiz, in this particular production, to the aunt. So again, build up, storyline, lackluster from the jump. Now, she gets to Oz, and this is the part I feel like was just like meh. You have the Deborah Cox as Glinda, the Good Witch. And they didn't take their moment. And I know people are going to be like, well, you know, with Deborah Cox, it's not about her. Technically, it is about her. Like, you don't have the Deborah Cox on your ticket for you not to make a moment out of that. Like, give this woman her moment. For example, she makes her appearance, but she's behind like some pillars that you can barely see her. So if you're sitting house right, you miss the whole moment of her coming out. And they took a beat for people to acknowledge seeing her, but half the audience can't see her. So it was just this kind of almost too subtle of a moment that they even recognized that they needed to pause on to allow the audience to be excited to see Deborah. And half of us cannot even see her. Now, mind you, my seats were great. I'm dead center. I can see the full totality of the stage, but my eyes didn't draw to her immediately because, again, she's off to the side, and I'm thinking, it's Deborah Cox, it's Glinda, sis is going to be front and center. It was so underwhelming, her coming out, particularly with half of us missing her, that it was just, Deborah came out, and not to, spoiler alert, she was in the beginning and she was in the end. She did her part and sis was out of there. And I feel like above all, she did what she needed to do. I feel like, though, I must say, all of the actors were great with what they were giving. I feel like a lot of my comments was more so director related and not the way the actors executed their characters. With that being said, I also feel like the production was just overall rushed. Like I said, it went from the Dorothy speaking to the aunt, to them trying to set up something that just never followed all the way through, to them spinning in this tornado, to them being in Oz, to, her now just being told that she has to go see a wizard, and she meet, the Tin Man and the Lion and the Scarecrow within matters of like seconds of each other. Well, it felt like seconds, but I'm over exaggerating. But it was rushed. And again, it was more so a lot of singing and not much vocalizing and helping you to keep track of what's going on, particularly when you're not familiar with the production. And I think that is a disservice because you're automatically assuming that it's an all-black audience and everybody there is familiar with The Wiz. Even if you're like, okay, if you're not familiar with Wiz, you're familiar with The Wizard of Oz. This is Broadway, though. Okay. We get through the first act. The second act, I was really starting to just be like, no. So it opens with a 9 to 10 minute dance scene, and I'm like, well, what is this? Like, it was supposed to be Emerald City. I feel like where they messed up was they were too busy trying to play to the audience versus draw the audience into their world. Meaning, I don't need a 10-minute dance scene about Emerald City because it's not about you entertaining me as the audience member. So I think if they would have done it in reverse, whereas Dorothy, the Tin Man, the Lion, and the Scarecrow, they opened the second act, did their whole monologue about getting into Emerald City, and then them inviting them into Emerald City with those dance scenes, it would have read better. Because now you're inviting Dorothy in to that world, and we're trying to see things through her lens, so therefore you're inviting us too. It was just really disjointed, and this is where I was like, let me look up who the director is. And the director name is, I think, Seychelle, what is her name? Shell Williams, I think is how you pronounce it. And I realized when I was looking her up, oh, she did Motown, or she was like a associate director or an assistant director, something like that, of Motown the musical. And I saw that one too. And I remember when I saw this, I was, again, extremely underwhelmed. And you can definitely see the styles of directing with this particular director, because that too was music heavy. It was almost like they were trying to give the audience a concert and give us all these Motown songs, and again, abandoning the plot. So when you're there, it's like, okay, great. You guys sound great. You know, the music, we're familiar with it. I'm not interested in a party. I'm interested in the history of Motown. Let me learn something. Let me get drawn into Diana Ross and her relationship with Berry Gordy. Like, it was just very song, dance, theatrical, non-Broadway performance. And I feel like The Wiz was the same thing. It just didn't do what it needed to do. More so when it got to the end of the production and she's singing about home. Home, no matter how I can sit here and say, I do not know The Wiz, I know home. That is the one thing I think everybody knows. I think you will more so know the music of The Wiz than you would like the storyline. And so with that being said, when it got to the end and she's singing about home, I was just not impressed. I wasn't moved. I wasn't emotionally invested because I didn't go through a journey with her to get to that part. There was no build up for her singing home. She sounded amazing, but there was, you can just feel it from the audience. There wasn't much captivation from us connected to that particular song and the way that she was singing it, because the journey was lost from the very beginning. If I had an opportunity to ask the directors and even any of the producers, because there's some heavy hitters, you know, Candy and Todd and Common and MC Light, you know, our producers, I would love to know how they are measuring success. Is success just measuring the fact that there are butts in seats? I mean, you got Deborah Cox, which is why my butt was in the seat. But at the end of the day, how do you keep us there? You know, I don't want to sound like one of those people who would ever say don't go see productions. I'm glad I went to go see this production, but the unfortunate part was I left not inspired. And I'm not accustomed to seeing any type of production and not leaving inspired. Inspired to write, inspired to act, inspired to, you know, sing, to dance, to be joyful, to just, you know, being a better person, whatever. I left with that happened. You know, there was nothing gravitating to me, to the performance, to the actors, to nothing. And I always feel like that's unfortunate when you're not able to grab someone by the overall essence of what you put on the stage. It's about just the basics. Give me the story and put me through the emotions. I want the emotions. So when it gets to that end and she's singing about home, I want to go home with her. To Candy, I would say if you're trying to go for the EGOT, I think you need to workshop this a little bit more. If I had to rate this production, I would give it a C. And a C for all the reasons I have already shared. It just was underwhelming. It didn't live up to the name of a Broadway production. I wasn't able to be connected and or engaged from beginning, middle, and end. It was rushed, and I think that it go see it. I would definitely recommend seeing the production and making an assessment for yourself. I genuinely think that everyone should go and support these productions because it is important and imperative, because we need to keep the arts alive. However, at the same token, we also need to make sure we rise to the occasion so that we are putting out quality work that inspires and keeps us wanting to come and see more. I know you can't fulfill the needs of everybody, but give them something worthwhile when they go, that they are invested in making sure that we support Black, African American productions, because it's important. It's important to the culture. It's important to the world. We as a culture need to be forever living on Broadway anyway. But it's difficult for me to be like, this is it. And I do not feel that way. Go see it, go support it. It is touring, and then I think it's premiering on Broadway in March, April of next year, and I'm hoping above hope by the time it gets to Broadway, it is not this. It really transforms into something great. Yeah, that's all I have to say on that. And do know that this is in no way of bashing anybody. This is just my opinion of what I saw, and sometimes you need constructive criticism and honest feedback to improve, because I want to see us winning a Tony. Like, and I want Candy to get that EGOT, sis, like for real. So I'm going to get off of my soapbox. Ooh, I hope nobody comes for me, because ooh, they can be cruel sometimes and very brutal when people give their opinion, but I'm a theater girl through and through. My degrees are in them. I live this. I breathe this. I go to see productions all the time. This is nothing new for me other than sitting on YouTube and sharing my opinion. But what good is it to have a platform, to have thespian in your name, to go and see performances and can adequately or intelligently speak on it and do not? At the end of the day, I want us all to win. And yeah, as per usual, if no one told you today, let me be the one to say, I love you. Bye.